He threw away a loyal woman who stood by him through everything, all for a fake fantasy that destroyed his life. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Calder Voss, and for 7 years, I believed I had the kind of love people spend their whole lives searching for. Her name was Alara Quinn. She came into my life when I had nothing, no stable job, no money, and no clear direction. Back then, I was just trying to survive, trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to become. Most people didn't take me seriously. Some even walked away when things got hard. But not Alara. She stayed. I still remember the small apartment we shared. It wasn't much, just a tiny space with old furniture and bills that kept piling up, but she made it feel like home. She worked long hours, sometimes double shifts, just to make sure we could get through the month. And no matter how tired she was, she always had a soft smile waiting for me when I walked through the door. There were nights I felt like giving up. Nights I thought I wasn't good enough, that I would never succeed. But Alara never let me stay in that place for too long. She would sit next to me, hold my hand, and remind me that I was capable of more. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. What makes it harder to admit now is that she never asked for anything in return. She didn't demand gifts, attention, or anything expensive. All she wanted was honesty, loyalty, and a future together. She trusted me completely, and she made me feel like I mattered. Looking back, I realize how rare that kind of love is, but at the time, I didn't see it that way. I got comfortable. I started thinking her loyalty was normal, something I would always have no matter what I did. Friends would tell me I was lucky, that Alara was the kind of woman you don't lose. I would nod and agree, but deep down, I didn't truly understand what they meant. I thought she would always be there, no matter how much I changed or how far I went. And maybe that was my first mistake. Because when someone gives you everything without asking for much, you start to forget their value. You stop noticing the small things they do. You stop appreciating their presence. You start thinking you deserve more, even when you already have everything. At the time, I didn't realize I was slowly becoming someone she wouldn't recognize. Someone who would one day look back at all those moments and wish he could go back. But life doesn't work like that. And I didn't know it yet, but I was already on the path to losing the one person who truly loved me. It didn't happen all at once. It started with small moments, glances, conversations, and a feeling I didn't try to stop. Her name was Zaylene Cross. I met her at a place I had started going to more often after work. She stood out the moment I saw her. She was loud, confident, and carried herself in a way that made people look twice. Everything about her was bold, her style, her voice, the way she laughed. She wasn't like Alara at all, and that's exactly what caught my attention. The first time we spoke, it was nothing serious. Just casual talk. But the way she looked at me, the way she reacted to everything I said, it made me feel important, like I was someone worth noticing. She gave me a kind of attention I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew it was dangerous. I knew I was already crossing a line just by entertaining it, but instead of stepping back, I leaned in. I started going there more often, hopping to see her. And every time I did, she made me feel the same way, admired, wanted, seen. She would compliment me, laugh at my jokes, and make everything feel exciting. It was different from the quiet, steady love I had at home. With Alara, everything was real, calm, and deep. With Zaylene, everything felt like a rush. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just talking. You stop noticing the small things they do. You stop appreciating their presence. You start thinking you deserve more, even when you already have everything. At the time, I didn't realize I was slowly becoming someone she wouldn't recognize. Someone who would one day look back at all those moments and wish he could go back. But life doesn't work like that. And I didn't know it yet, but I was already on the path to losing the one person who truly loved me. It didn't happen all at once. It started with small moments, glances, conversations, and a feeling I didn't try to stop. Her name was Zaylene Cross. I met her at a place I had started going to more often after work. She stood out the moment I saw her. She was loud, confident, and carried herself in a way that made people look twice. Everything about her was bold, her style, her voice, the way she laughed. She wasn't like Alara at all, and that's exactly what caught my attention. The first time we spoke, it was nothing serious. Just casual talk. But the way she looked at me, the way she reacted to everything I said, it made me feel important, like I was someone worth noticing. She gave me a kind of attention I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew it was dangerous. I knew I was already crossing a line just by entertaining it, but instead of stepping back, I leaned in. I started going there more often, hopping to see her. And every time I did, she made me feel the same way, admired, wanted, seen. She would compliment me, laugh at my jokes, and make everything feel exciting. It was different from the quiet, steady love I had at home. With Alara, everything was real, calm, and deep. With Zaylene, everything felt like a rush. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just talking, that it didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true, because I started thinking about Zaylene even when I was at home. I would compare the two without even realizing it. Alara would ask me how my day was, and I'd give her short answers. But with Zaylene, I would talk for hours, sharing things I had stopped sharing at home. That's when the distance grew even more. I began hiding things, deleting messages, making excuses about where I was going and why I was coming home late. Lies became easier to tell, and I stopped feeling as bad about them as I should have. Zaylene didn't ask about my life in a deep way. She didn't care about my past struggles or my future plans. What she cared about was how I showed up in the moment, how I dressed, what I could offer, how I made her feel. And at the time, that felt enough for me, maybe because it was easier. There was no pressure to be vulnerable, no responsibility to build something real. It was all surface, all excitement. And I convinced myself that this was what I had been missing. One night, she leaned closer to me and said, "You don't seem like the type to stay tied down." That sentence stayed in my head. Instead of correcting her, instead of telling her about Alara and everything we had built, I just smiled. I let her believe that I was someone free, someone unattached. And in that moment, I made a choice, not a loud one, not something dramatic, but a quiet decision to step further away from the life I already had and closer to something that only looked good on the surface. I didn't realize it then, but I was already losing control of everything. At some point, it stopped being harmless. What started as conversations turned into something more, and I knew exactly what I was doing. I just chose not to stop. I kept telling myself I was in control, that I could handle both sides of my life without things falling apart. But that was a lie. I began spending more time with Zaylene, finding reasons to be away from home. Every excuse sounded believable because Alara trusted me. She never questioned me in a way that made me feel cornered. And instead of respecting that trust, I used it. There were nights I would sit across from Zaylene, laughing, enjoying the moment while knowing someone at home was waiting for me, someone who had done nothing but love me honestly. And still, I didn't stop. Alara started noticing the distance more clearly. She would look at me like she was trying to understand what had changed. Sometimes she would ask simple questions, nothing accusing, just soft concern in her voice. "Are you okay? Did I do something wrong?" Those questions should have hit me harder. But instead, I became defensive. I would tell her she was overthinking, that everything was fine, even when it clearly was. I remember one evening when she sat next to me, quiet for a while before speaking. "You feel far away," she said. I didn't even look at her when I answered. I just shrugged and said I was tired. But the truth was, I wasn't tired. I was avoiding her, because facing her meant facing what I was doing. The more she tried to hold on, the more I pulled away. And eventually, I reached a point where I stopped pretending things were normal. I started convincing myself that I wanted something different, that I had outgrown the life we built, that maybe Alara and I were never meant to last. It was easier to believe that than to admit I was the one breaking everything. So one day I said it. I told her we needed to talk. She sat across from me, calm but tense, like she already knew what was coming. I could see it in her eyes. She had been preparing herself for this moment long before I said a word. I told her I wasn't happy anymore, that I needed something new, something different. I didn't mention Zaylene directly, but I didn't need to. The truth was already there, hanging between us. For a moment, she just looked at me. No shouting, no begging, no dramatic reaction, just silence. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, that was it. No fight, no attempt to change my mind, just acceptance. And somehow that felt heavier than anything else she could have done. I expected tears, questions, something that would make this easier for me to process. But she didn't give me that. She just stood up, walked away, and started separating her things quietly. That's when I felt something shift for the first time. Not guilt. Not yet. Just discomfort. But even then, I didn't stop. I walked away from 7 years like it was something replaceable, and I truly believed I was choosing something better. The strange thing was, after I walked away, I expected things to be messy. I thought there would be calls, messages, maybe even moments where she would try to change my mind. But there was nothing. Alara didn't chase me. She didn't argue or try to remind me of what we had. She didn't ask for explanations or closure. She simply let me go. At first, I told myself that made things easier. No drama, no complications. I was free to move on with my life the way I wanted. But that silence started to feel different after a while. The day I went back to pick up the rest of my things, the apartment already felt empty. Not physically, most of the furniture was still there, but emotionally it felt like something had already ended long before I admitted it. She was there, calm as ever, packing a few final things. When I walked in, she didn't look surprised. She just gave a small nod, like she had already accepted everything. We didn't talk much. There was no long conversation, no emotional goodbye. Just short, necessary words. At one point, I tried to say something, maybe to ease the tension or make myself feel less like the bad person in the situation. "I didn't mean for things to end like this," I said. She paused for a second, then looked at me. Not with anger, not with sadness, just clarity. "Maybe not," she replied quietly, "but you still chose it." That hit deeper than I expected. There was no accusation in her voice, no attempt to hurt me back, just truth. And for a moment, I didn't have anything to say. I realized then that she wasn't weak. She wasn't someone who needed to beg to be loved. She had simply accepted what I had shown her, that I wasn't the person she thought I was anymore. And instead of fighting for something broken, she chose herself. Before I left, I looked around one last time. All the little things we built together, the memories, the effort, the time, it was all still there, but it didn't belong to me anymore. She had already let go. And I walked out like I hadn't just lost something real. That same night, I met up with Zaylene. Everything about her world felt alive, fast, and exciting. There were no heavy emotions, no silence, no past to think about. Just music, lights, and attention. She smiled when she saw me, wrapped her arms around me like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And for a moment, I believed it. I told myself this was the life I wanted now. No responsibility, no deep attachments, no weight, just freedom. But deep down, there was a small part of me that felt off. I ignored it, because it was easier to focus on the excitement in front of me than to think about the quiet strength I had just walked away from. I didn't know it yet, but that silence Alara left behind wasn't emptiness. It was closure, and I was the only one who didn't understand what that really meant. At first, everything with Zaylene felt like I had made the right choice. There was always something happening, new places, new faces, constant movement. She loved going out, loved being seen, and somehow I became part of that world. People noticed her, and by being with her, they noticed me too. It fed something inside me that I didn't even realize had grown so strong. She would dress in ways that turned heads, speak in ways that demanded attention, and carry herself like she was above everyone else in the room. And I won't lie, I liked it. I liked being next to someone who made people look twice. But it didn't take long before I started seeing things more clearly. Zaylene wasn't like Alara. There was no quiet understanding, no deep conversations about life or the future. Everything stayed on the surface. If things weren't exciting, she lost interest quickly. She didn't ask how my day went unless it somehow involved her. She didn't care about the struggles I had faced to get where I was. To her, what mattered was what I had now and how I could use it to match her lifestyle. At first, I ignored it. I told myself that not every relationship had to be deep. Maybe this was just different. Maybe this was what I needed now. But then the demands started. It began with small things, expensive dinners, gifts, trips. She never asked directly in the beginning. She would just hint at things she liked or compare me to other men who did more. And without realizing it, I started trying to prove myself. I spent more than I should have just to keep up with her expectations. Every time I thought it was enough, there was something else, something bigger, something more. And slowly, it stopped feeling like I was enjoying the relationship. It felt like I was trying to maintain it. There were moments when I would sit across from her, watching her scroll through her phone, barely paying attention to me, and I would think about how different this felt from what I had before. With Alara, silence was comfortable. With Zaylene, silence felt empty. One night, we got into our first real argument. It was over something small, at least to me. I told her I couldn't make it to a place she wanted to go because I had work early the next morning. She didn't take it well. "You're always making excuses," she said, her tone sharp. "If you really cared, you'd make it happen." I tried to explain, but she wasn't listening. For her, it wasn't about understanding, it was about getting her way. That was the first time I felt it clearly. This wasn't love. It was control, mixed with expectations I could never fully meet. But even then, I didn't walk away. Maybe because I had already given up so much to be here. Maybe because I didn't want to admit I made a mistake. So instead of leaving, I stayed and convinced myself things would get better. I kept chasing that excitement I felt at the beginning, not realizing it was already fading. And in its place, something else was growing. Pressure, exhaustion, and a quiet feeling that I had traded something real for something that only looked good from the outside. The more time passed, the more everything started to feel heavy. What once felt exciting with Zaylene slowly turned into something draining. Every day felt like I had to prove something, prove I could keep up, prove I was worth her time, prove I could give her the life she expected. And no matter how much I did, it never felt like enough. The arguments became more frequent. Sometimes over small things, sometimes over nothing at all. If I said no to anything she wanted, her attitude would change instantly. The warmth would disappear, replaced by cold silence or sharp words that stayed with me long after. I started noticing patterns I had ignored before. She only seemed happy when she was getting something out of me: attention, money, experiences. But the moment things slowed down, she pulled away. There was no effort from her side to build anything real between us. It felt one-sided, and that's when the pressure began to affect other parts of my life. I was spending more than I should have, trying to keep her satisfied. Bills that used to be manageable started stacking up again. I told myself it was temporary, that things would balance out, but deep down, I knew I was slipping. Work became harder to focus on. My mind was always somewhere else, either dealing with her or worrying about how to keep everything together. I wasn't performing the way I used to, and people started noticing. Opportunities I once had started to fade. But even then, I kept going. Because admitting the truth meant facing something I wasn't ready to face, that I had walked away from something real for this. One night, everything finally cracked. We were out and she was acting distant the entire time. I asked her what was wrong, but she brushed me off. Later, when we were alone, she finally said it. "I don't think this is working," she said, like it was nothing. I was caught off guard. After everything I had done, everything I had given, she was the one saying it wasn't working. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shrugged, barely looking at me. "I just feel like you're not on my level anymore." Those words hit hard, not because they were true, but because they showed exactly how she saw me. Not as a partner, not as someone she cared about, just as someone who either met her expectations or didn't. I tried to fix it. I tried to remind her of everything we had been doing, everything I had been giving. But she didn't care. Her decision was already made. And just like that, she walked away. No hesitation, no emotion, no looking back. The same way I had once walked away from Alara, except this time I was the one left standing there. Alone. Everything I had built around Zaylene collapsed in that moment. The excitement, the attention, the illusion, it was all gone. And what was left behind was something I couldn't ignore anymore. Silence, but unlike before, this silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. And for the first time, I started to understand what I had really lost. After Zaylene left, everything around me felt different. The same places I once enjoyed didn't feel the same anymore. The noise, the lights, the constant movement, it all felt exhausting now. I would sit alone sometimes, just thinking about how quickly everything had changed. Not long ago, I thought I had it all. Now I was left with nothing that actually mattered. The worst part wasn't that she left. It was how easily she did it, like I meant nothing. Like everything I gave, everything I tried to build with her was never real to begin with. And that's when the thoughts started coming back. Not about her, but about Alara. At first, it was small things. The way she used to wait for me. The calm feeling of coming home after a long day. The quiet conversations that didn't need effort. Things I once ignored or took for granted suddenly felt important. I started comparing without even trying. With Zaylene, everything was loud but empty. With Alara, everything was quiet but real. That realization hit me slowly, but once it settled in, it didn't leave. I began to see things clearly for the first time. Alara never made me feel like I had to earn her care. She never made me question my worth. She stood beside me when I had nothing, not because of what I could give her, but because of who I was. And I threw that away. For what? For attention that disappeared the moment I couldn't keep up. for something that looked good on the outside but had no depth. I started replaying moments in my head, the way she looked at me when I pushed her away, the calm way she accepted everything, the words she said before I left. "You still chose it." At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant. Now I did. I chose all of this. I chose to ignore her loyalty. I chose to chase something fake. I chose to walk away from something real, and now I had to live with it. The regret didn't come all at once. It built up little by little until it became something I couldn't ignore. It followed me everywhere. In the quiet moments, in the long nights, in the silence that filled my space. I tried to distract myself, but nothing worked, because the truth was simple. I missed her. Not just her presence, but the way she made life feel steady. The way she cared without conditions. The way she believed in me before anyone else did. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Guilt. Real, heavy guilt. But guilt doesn't change the past. And no matter how much I thought about it, no matter how much I wished things were different, I couldn't undo what I had done. Still, a part of me held on to a small hope. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe I could fix this. Maybe she would listen. I didn't know if I deserved that chance, but I knew one thing. I had to try. It took me days to finally build the courage to reach out to her. I stared at her number for a long time before doing anything. My mind kept going back and forth. What if she didn't answer? What if she had already moved on? What if I was too late? But deep down, I already knew the truth. Still, I called. The phone rang longer than I expected. Each second felt heavier than the last. I almost hung up, thinking maybe it was better to leave things the way they were. Then she answered. "Hello." Her voice was calm, the same calm I remembered. It made my chest tighten for a second because it felt familiar but distant at the same time. "Ilara, it's me," I said. There was a short pause on the other end, not shocked, not emotional, just quiet. "I know," she replied. I didn't know what to say next. All the things I had been thinking about, all the regret, all the words I wanted to explain, it suddenly felt harder to say them out loud. "I was wondering if we could talk," I said finally. Another pause. "We're talking," she answered. Her tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It was steady, controlled. "I mean in person," I added. "Just once." For a moment I thought she would say no, but then she agreed. "Okay," she said. "One time." We met a couple of days later. When I saw her, something felt different right away. She looked the same, but at the same time not the same at all. There was a kind of peace in her that I didn't remember noticing before. She wasn't carrying any weight from the past. I was. We sat across from each other, and for a moment neither of us spoke. I could feel everything I had done sitting between us. "I'm sorry," I said first. She nodded slightly like she expected that. "I know I messed up," I continued. "I didn't see what I had. I thought I wanted something else, but I was wrong. I see that now." She listened without interrupting. "I miss you," I said. "I miss us, and I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping maybe we could try again, start over." The words felt heavy, but I meant every one of them. For a few seconds, she didn't respond. She just looked at me, calm and steady. Then she spoke. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said. For a moment, I felt a small sense of relief, but it didn't last long. "Forgiving you doesn't mean I want you back," she added. That hit harder than anything else. "I've moved on," she continued. "Not with someone else, just within myself. I'm not the same person you left, and I don't want to go back to that version of me." I tried to say something, but she gently shook her head. "You made your choice," she said softly, "and I accepted it." That was my closure. There was no anger in her voice, no bitterness, just truth. And in that moment, I realized something I had been avoiding. I didn't just lose her. I lost my chance. After that day, everything became quieter, but not in a peaceful way. There was no more confusion about where I stood, no more false hope that things might go back to how they were. The truth had been clearly said, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stopped trying to reach out after that. Not because I didn't want to, but because I understood that pushing further would only cause more damage. She had already made her decision, and for once I respected it. But respecting her choice didn't make the pain any easier. In fact, it made it worse. Because now I had to sit with everything I had done. There was no one else to blame. No excuses left, just me and the reality I created. I started thinking about the past more than ever. Not just the good moments, but everything, the sacrifices, the effort, the quiet love that I once overlooked. It was strange how memory works. The more I tried to forget, the more clearly everything came back. I remembered the nights she stayed up waiting for me. I remembered how she never complained, even when she had every reason to. I remembered how she looked at me when she believed in me more than I believed in myself. And then I remembered how I treated her. That's what hurt the most, because I knew she didn't deserve any of it. Meanwhile, life around me didn't feel like it was falling apart in a dramatic way. There was no loud collapse, no big event that forced me to face the consequences. Instead, it was slow. I started losing motivation. Things that once excited me now felt empty. I didn't enjoy the same places, the same people, or the same lifestyle I thought I wanted. Even when I tried to move forward, something felt missing. And deep down, I knew exactly what it was. I also started noticing something else. The people I thought were part of my life didn't really care the way I expected. The attention I once enjoyed didn't feel genuine anymore. It was conditional, temporary. The moment I wasn't giving, it faded. That's when I understood the difference between what I had with Alara and everything else. What she gave me wasn't based on what I could offer. It was based on who I was, and I had taken that for granted. I didn't talk about this with many people. Some things are too heavy to explain, so I kept most of it to myself and tried to process it in silence. But no matter how much time passed, one thought kept coming back. If I had just been different, if I had valued what I had, things could have been so much better. But thinking about what if doesn't change reality. It just makes you realize how much you lost. And in my case, I lost something that wasn't easy to find again. A real connection. A loyal partner. A person who loved me without conditions. Now all I had left was the weight of my choices and the understanding that some mistakes don't just hurt you. They stay with you. In the end, there was no dramatic ending, no big moment of revenge, no confrontation where everything got settled in a single day. What actually happened was much quieter. Life moved on. Alara moved on. And I was left to face my own choices every single day. I stopped trying to reach her again. Not because I didn't feel the urge, but because I finally understood that some doors don't reopen once they are closed. She wasn't waiting for me, and she had no reason to. That realization hurt more than anything I had experienced before, because it meant I had truly lost her. Not just physically, but completely. I began to change in small ways after that. Not overnight, and not in a perfect way, but slowly. I started thinking more before making decisions. I paid attention to people's actions instead of just their words. I became more aware of what real effort looks like. It didn't fix what I had done. Nothing could. But it helped me understand how much I had taken for granted before. Sometimes I would catch myself thinking about how different things could have been if I had stayed consistent, if I had respected what we built, if I hadn't allowed outside attention to change me. Those thoughts didn't go away, but over time they became lessons instead of just pain. And as for Alara, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she was doing well, not just surviving, but truly living. She had found stability, peace, and a life where she was valued the way she deserved to be. There was no bitterness in me when I heard that, only a quiet acceptance, because deep down I knew that was the outcome she deserved. She didn't need revenge. Her life became her proof. And mine became my consequence. I don't share this story to ask for sympathy. I share it because I know how easy it is to take the wrong path when everything seems exciting on the surface. It's easy to confuse attention with love and excitement with something meaningful. But not everything that looks good is good for you, and not everything that feels new is better than what you already have. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that loyalty is rare. When someone truly stands by you, through your worst moments, that kind of love is not something you should test or replace. Because once it's gone, it's not guaranteed to come back. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is this. The person you lost wasn't the one who failed you. It was you who failed them. And by the time you understand